Tell us in the comments which state you're listening from. Click the like button, and let's begin the story. Ethan was 10 years old when he discovered that the director of the Willowbrook Group home had sold his best friend Lucas to a family that promised light farm work. That night, Ethan had seen everything from the basement window, where he'd been locked as punishment for stealing an apple from the kitchen. Wrinkled bills changing hands. Forged documents being signed. Quiet promises whispered about a better future. Ethan knew the truth. Lucas was 9 years old. He built paper airplanes and dreamed of becoming a pilot someday. He shared his bread with Ethan when he was sick. He invented stories to make the younger children laugh. That morning, Lucas disappeared under the lie of a special adoption. The Willowbrook Group home rose like a gray fortress on the outskirts of Charleston, West Virginia. 40 children crammed into damp rooms. Food rationed so tightly that hunger was constant. Severe punishment for any complaint. Ethan had arrived there 5 years earlier after his parents were killed in a mine collapse in McDowell County. With no known relatives, no one ever came looking for him. The children learned the unwritten rules quickly. Don't ask about those who disappear. Don't complain. Stay invisible when strange visitors arrive. Children who caused trouble were sent to the basement for days without light. Those who persisted simply vanished overnight, replaced by new faces before dawn. Ethan survived by becoming useful. He was agile enough to climb roofs, strong enough to carry heavy sacks, quiet enough to move without being noticed. Director Margaret Hayes used him for tasks that required discretion. In exchange, Ethan was spared the worst punishments. That protection ended the moment he asked what had happened to Lucas. That afternoon, Ethan overheard the director on the phone. The boy Ethan is asking too many questions. Yes, the 10-year-old. Dark hair, green eyes. No family asking about him. Perfect for the next shipment. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He pretended to rest while desperately planning his escape. For weeks, he had studied the guards' routines. He knew the second-floor bathroom window had loose bars. He knew the timing of the night patrols. At dawn, he acted. During morning showers, while the other children bathed, Ethan worked the loose bars with a spoon stolen from the cafeteria. One by one, they gave way until the opening was just wide enough for his thin body. He slipped through the window and slid down a drain pipe, the cold metal cutting into his bare hands. The backyard was silent. He climbed the wall using protruding stones and jumped to the other side, landing in bushes that softened the fall. He ran through cobblestone streets as the town woke up. His group home clothes betrayed him. Faded gray pants, a yellowed white shirt, shoes full of holes. He looked exactly like what he was, a runaway foster kid. Ethan followed the old railroad tracks toward the mountains. He had heard workers talk about abandoned coal towns in the highlands, places where mines had dried up and families had left, leaving behind empty houses and forgotten lives. By midday, he reached a railway bridge crossing a deep ravine. Below him lay the rusted skeleton of an old mining town. Collapsed wooden houses. A church without a steeple. Structures eaten away by time and weather. He followed a winding path down into the ghost town. Weeds filled the streets. Broken doors hung from their hinges. Empty windows stared at the sky like hollow eyes. Ethan searched house after house for shelter, but every roof had collapsed and every floor rotted beneath his weight. As sunset painted the Appalachian mountains gold, Ethan still had nowhere to hide. That was when he noticed something strange at the edge of the town. Hidden by wild vegetation and years of accumulated earth was something that didn't belong among the ruins. A buried car. Only the roof and rear windows were visible, as if the ground had slowly swallowed the rest. It was elegant, painted a deep navy blue that still shone beneath layers of dirt. Ethan approached cautiously and began digging around the driver's door with his bare hands, pulling away compacted soil and tangled roots. The work was exhausting, but something pushed him to continue. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was instinct. After nearly an hour, he freed the door handle. He pulled with all his strength. The door opened with a metallic groan, releasing air that smelled of old leather and frozen time. Ethan leaned inside, and what he saw changed his life forever. The interior was perfectly preserved. Brown leather seats gleamed as if they had been polished recently. The wooden dashboard reflected the fading light. But it was the objects inside that stole his breath. On the back seat lay a hand-woven blanket in vibrant colors. Carefully placed on it were toys that clearly belonged to a child. Lead soldiers, glass marbles, a hand-carved wooden horse. On the floor were books wrapped in waxcloth, adventure stories, tales of pirates and explorers, science books filled with illustrations, books that spoke of parents who believed in imagination. Then Ethan opened the glove compartment. Inside was a family photograph, an elegant man with a mustache, a beautiful woman in a lace dress, and between them, a boy no older than 10, exactly Ethan's age. The boy smiled with a joy so pure that Ethan felt something break inside him. Beneath the photo was a handwritten note. For our beloved son James, on his 10th birthday. May this car take you on every adventure you dream of living. With all our love. Mom and Dad. May 15th, 1947. Ethan sat in the driver's seat holding the photo with trembling hands. And he began to cry. He cried for the 5 years of loneliness in the group home. He cried for his parents, buried in the darkness of a mine. He cried for Lucas, sold like merchandise. He cried for every child whose life was priced by adults. But he also cried for something deeper, for the discovery that families like James's existed. Families where children were loved so deeply that their dreams were protected. Wrapped in the blanket, Ethan curled up in the back seat. For the first time in 5 years, he fell asleep feeling safe. He didn't yet know that this buried car held secrets that would transform his destiny. He didn't know that James had grown into one of the most generous men in Virginia. He didn't know that stepping into this car was crossing into a life he had never dared to imagine. Ethan woke with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the rear windows of the car. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the smell of old leather, the toys beside him, and the quiet stillness brought him calm. He had slept better than he had in years. He stepped out of the car and explored the ghost town in the morning light. Now he could see that it had once been prosperous. Large houses with wide porches. A schoolhouse with chalkboards still hanging on the walls. A general store with dusty bottles lining the shelves. He found a well that still held fresh water, though he had to filter it through his shirt to remove dead leaves. In the remains of an orchard, he discovered fruit trees that had continued growing wild. Small but sweet apples, ripe plums, walnuts that had to be cracked open with stones. But it was the distant sound of engines that sent him back to the car in a panic. From his hiding place among the weeds, Ethan saw 3 vehicles climbing the dirt road that led to the town. He recognized them immediately. The white vans of the group home. Director Hayes had organized a systematic search. Ethan slipped back into the car and closed the door silently. From the rear windows, he could watch without being seen. The men spread out through the ruins, shouting his name, threatening punishment if he didn't surrender voluntarily. "We know you're here, Ethan." Margaret Hayes's voice echoed through the empty streets. "It's better if you come out now. We have buyers waiting, and we don't like to keep clients waiting." Ethan shrank into the seat. Hearing confirmation that they planned to sell him filled him with a new determination to remain hidden. For 2 hours, the men searched every ruined house, every visible cave, every structure that could serve as shelter. They passed near the buried car several times, but decades of overgrowth camouflaged it perfectly. When they finally left at sunset, Ethan heard Hayes say to one of her men, "We'll be back tomorrow with tracking dogs. That boy is worth too much money to let him escape." That night, Ethan explored the car more thoroughly. In the trunk, he found a leather suitcase filled with children's clothes, neatly folded. The garments were of exceptional quality, made from fine fabrics with polished buttons. There were even small leather shoes that fit him perfectly. He also found something that intrigued him, a folded map of Virginia, with several locations marked in red ink. Beside it lay a notebook written in elegant cursive handwriting. Properties of the Westbrook family. Main house, Richmond. Cattle ranch, Shenandoah Valley. Summer house, Blue Ridge Mountains. Coal mine Coalwood. Family refuge. Navy blue Cadillac, secret location. The final entry was dated only 1 month earlier. James has established a trust fund for children in need. The refuge must remain available for those who find it in moments of desperation. Ethan read the notes several times before fully understanding. The car had not been abandoned by accident. It had been left intentionally as a refuge. James, the boy in the photograph, had grown up and prepared this place to help other children in desperate situations. At the back of the notebook, Ethan found a sealed letter addressed to the child who finds this refuge. With trembling hands, he opened it. My dear unknown friend, my name is James Westbrook. The navy blue Cadillac, where you are reading this, was my 10th birthday gift. For years, it was my favorite place in the world, where I read adventures, dreamed of distant lands, and felt completely happy. My parents died when I was 16. Their accident left me alone, but also responsible for a considerable fortune. I have spent my adult life using that wealth to help children who did not have the advantages I had. If you have found this car, it is because you need help desperately. Inside, you will find supplies to keep you safe for weeks. But more importantly, you will find instructions to contact people who can permanently change your life. In the secret compartment behind the driver's seat, you will find documents that give you access to a fund I established specifically for orphan children. You will also find addresses of families who have agreed to open their homes to children in need. I ask only one thing. When you no longer need this help, help another child in your situation with the care of someone who understands what it means to be alone. James Westbrook. March 1947. Ethan searched frantically until he found the secret compartment. Inside was a thick envelope filled with cash, legal documents, and a list of names and addresses in different cities. For the first time since escaping the group home, Ethan felt real hope. Not just a hiding place, a future. But he also understood the risk. Claiming this help meant trusting unknown adults, exposing himself, risking betrayal. So he decided to remain hidden in the car for a few more days. During the following week, Ethan created a careful routine. He left the car only at dawn and dusk to gather food and water. The rest of the time, he read the books James had left behind. He studied maps. He memorized names and addresses. The books opened worlds he had never imagined. Explorers discovering continents. Scientists creating inventions. Heroes saving lives. For the first time in his life, Ethan began dreaming of a future instead of merely surviving the present. It was during the second week that he made a discovery that changed everything. While cleaning the car's interior with reverence, he noticed that one of the side panels in the trunk shifted slightly when pressed. He worked carefully until it slid open, revealing another hidden compartment. Inside was a sealed metal box. When he opened it, he found documents that took his breath away. Property deeds, legal wills, bank correspondence, and one document that made his hands tremble. A recent will, dated just 2 months earlier. It bequeathed James Westbrook's entire fortune to any orphan child who found the blue car refuge and demonstrated genuine need and noble character. There was also a more recent letter. I have lived 22 years since my parents died. I used their fortune to help hundreds of children, but I was never able to form my own family. A heart condition is taking my time faster than I expected. Before I die, I want to ensure that a child has the opportunity to experience the love and safety I had during my first 16 years. The child who finds this will not only receive money, they will receive 3 families who have agreed to adopt them as their own. The Harrison family in Charlottesville, the Westbrook family in Shenandoah Valley, the Cooper family in Roanoke. You may choose where you wish to live and who you want as your parents. There is only one condition. You must commit to using part of this inheritance to help other orphan children when you are an adult. My lawyer, Robert Hartfield in Richmond, has specific instructions. When a child presents these documents, the adoption and transfer process will begin immediately. I hope you are happy for many years. James. Ethan read the documents 3 times before believing them. This wasn't just refuge. It was a family. an inheritance, a completely transformed future. But claiming it meant leaving the ghost town, traveling to Richmond, and risking capture by Director Hayes's men. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He walked around the car under the moonlight, weighing his options. He could stay hidden indefinitely, or he could risk everything to claim the future James had prepared for him. By dawn, he had made his decision. At dawn, Ethan dressed in the best clothes he found inside the car. He carefully packed every document, folded the letters, and left a handwritten note on the driver's seat for James, just in case spirits could read gratitude. Then he began the journey back toward Richmond. He carried little more than a small bag and an enormous risk. But for the first time in years, he was not running blindly. He was walking toward something. The journey took all day. Ethan avoided main roads, staying on mountain paths where the group home vans would not search. The elegant clothes James had left him made him look respectable, and the few travelers he passed did not question him. He reached Richmond at sunset. The city buzzed with ordinary life. Workers returning home, vendors packing their stalls, families eating dinner in homes filled with warm light. Ethan watched these scenes with a mixture of longing and hope. He found the address of James's lawyer on an elegant street in the historic district. The building was carved stone with wrought iron balconies, the kind of place where important people worked. Ethan waited at a nearby cafe until morning, rehearsing his words again and again. At exactly 9 o'clock, he knocked on the lawyer's office door. An elderly secretary with gold-rimmed glasses opened and examined him carefully. "Good morning," Ethan said, gathering all the formality he could. "My name is Ethan. I'm here to claim the inheritance left to me by Mr. James Westbrook." Her eyes widened. "One moment, please." She returned with an older man, gray-bearded, impeccably dressed. He studied Ethan for a long moment, then smiled softly. "James told me you would come one day," the lawyer said. "I've been waiting. Come in, son." The office was filled with law books, framed diplomas, and photographs of James at different stages of his life. The lawyer gestured toward a comfortable chair. "Before we proceed," he said gently, "I need to hear your story." James was very specific about helping only children who truly needed saving. Ethan told him everything. The group home, the selling of children, Lucas, his escape, the buried car, the documents. As Ethan spoke, the lawyer took notes, occasionally nodding in understanding. When Ethan finished, the man examined the papers carefully. "These documents are authentic," he said, "and your situation is exactly the kind of case James prepared this inheritance for." Then his expression grew serious. "James passed away 3 weeks ago. He had a heart condition from a young age, caused by the shock of losing his parents so violently. He spent the last 22 years of his life building this system to help children like you." He opened a thick folder. "These are the 3 families who have agreed to adopt you." Ethan studied the photographs and letters. The Harrison family in Charlottesville owned a bookstore. They had lost their 10-year-old son to leukemia. The Westbrook family in Shenandoah Valley were ranchers who had lost their daughter in a riding accident. The Cooper family in Roanoke were teachers who had lost their only child to pneumonia. "As a son?" Ethan asked quietly. "Yes," the lawyer replied. "As a son." Then his tone changed. "There is something urgent we need to discuss." He leaned forward. "Yesterday, the director of the Willowbrook Group Home came here. She claims you are her runaway ward and is demanding that I return you to her custody immediately. She has documents to support her legal claim." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "But," the lawyer continued, "I investigated her." He pulled a sealed file from a locked drawer. "I have contacts in the FBI monitoring human trafficking operations. Her name appears in multiple criminal investigations." He opened the file. "Margaret Hayes does not run a legitimate group home. She operates a child trafficking network that spans the country. Children are sold into forced labor, agricultural work, and worse." Ethan felt sick. "The good news," the lawyer said calmly, "is that I can protect you legally. James's trust grants you independent legal status. But processing everything will take time. What do I do meanwhile? Ethan asked. The lawyer smiled. James anticipated this. He led Ethan through a back door into a small but comfortable apartment hidden above the office. This was James's personal refuge when he visited Richmond, completely hidden from the street. You can stay here safely while I resolve your legal situation. For the next 2 weeks, Ethan lived a life he had never known. In the mornings, he studied with private tutors the lawyer hired. In the afternoons, he read in a private library filled with books on science and adventure. At night, he helped with simple research work. It was the first real education he had received since his parents died. His tutors were astonished by his intelligence and hunger for knowledge. But he also learned darker truths. The lawyer showed him investigative files on Hayes's criminal network. She wasn't just a group home director. She was a regional coordinator for an international trafficking organization. At least 200 children had passed through her operation in 5 years. Most were never seen again. Ethan thought of Lucas. What can we do to help them? He asked. The lawyer nodded gravely. That question means you're ready. He handed Ethan a sealed letter. James wrote this shortly before he died. He wanted you to read it only after you fully understood what other children are facing. Ethan opened it carefully. My dear heir, if you are reading this, you have begun to understand that your salvation is only the beginning of a greater mission. My fortune can give you comfort, education, and a loving family. But it can also save hundreds of children who are trapped where you once were. You have a choice. You may live quietly as the adopted child of a wonderful family, or you may use this inheritance to build a rescue operation and save as many children as possible. If you choose the second path, it will be dangerous. You will face violent criminals. You will risk your safety repeatedly. But you will have the chance to transform your suffering into freedom for others. There is no right or wrong choice. If you decide to help others, detailed instructions are in the secret safe behind the bedroom painting. The combination is your birthday. Whatever you choose, you will always be my beloved heir. James. Ethan read the letter 3 times. Then he looked up. Where is the safe? The lawyer smiled. James said you'd ask that immediately. Behind a painting in the bedroom, Ethan found the safe. Inside were detailed plans for what James had called Operation Children's Freedom. Maps of trafficking locations. Lists of FBI contacts willing to assist in coordinated raids. Names of families across the country ready to adopt rescued children. Blueprints for secret refuges where runaway children could hide safely. And a fund large enough to finance a war against organized crime. Are you sure James wanted a 10-year-old to lead this? The lawyer asked quietly. Ethan studied the documents. I think James wanted someone who knows what it feels like to be sold like livestock to lead it. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. For the first time since his parents' death, he felt something stronger than hope. He felt purpose. The next morning, Ethan asked the lawyer to arrange meetings with the 3 potential adoptive families. But he added one condition. I want them to know from the beginning that I plan to use James's inheritance to rescue other children. If they want a son who will live quietly, I am not the right child for them. 1 week later, Ethan met all 3 families. The Harrison family in Charlottesville had enormous hearts, but they were afraid. The rescue operations sounded too dangerous. The Cooper family in Roanoke admired his mission, but wanted him to wait until adulthood before engaging in such risky work. But the Westbrook family in Shenandoah Valley reacted differently. Our daughter Sarah died because we couldn't afford experimental treatment when she became ill. Catherine Westbrook said, a strong woman with kind eyes. If we can save other children from similar tragedies, Sarah would be proud. Her husband Thomas added, we have a large ranch with space to build shelters. I have contacts in the state government who can help. And Catherine was a teacher for 20 years. She can educate rescued children. Catherine took Ethan's hands gently. But more than anything, she said, we want a son who has the courage to help others. Sarah was like that. She always brought home injured animals to heal. Ethan knew instantly. He had found his family. The adoption process moved quickly. The Westbrook family had an impeccable reputation, financial stability, and glowing recommendations throughout the valley. But the day before Ethan was to leave Richmond, the lawyer received alarming news. "Hayes has discovered your location," he said gravely. "She has men watching the building. They'll try to kidnap you before you can leave the city." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "How did she find us?" "Someone in my office has been feeding her information. Likely my secretary. Hayes has enough money to buy silence." The lawyer began urgently packing documents. "We need to get you out tonight. There's a secret passage connecting this building to the basement of the neighboring church." Ethan stopped him. "No," he said calmly but firmly. "I'm done running. Ethan, these are armed criminals. They could kill you. And they'll keep killing children until someone stops them." Ethan walked to the safe and pulled out the plans for Operation Children's Freedom. James left everything ready. It's time to use his resources. "You're too young." "Do you know how old James was when he lost his parents and had to manage a fortune?" Ethan asked. 16. "Do you know how old he was when he began rescuing children?" 18. "I'm 10, but I've lived things that forced me to grow faster." He spread the documents across the desk. "And I won't do this alone. James built a network of professionals. I just need to be the voice that activates it." The lawyer studied the plans for several minutes. "If we do this," he said slowly, "it has to be tonight, before Hayes brings more reinforcements into the city." "Good," Ethan replied. "It's time for Director Hayes to learn that not every child stays a victim forever." But none of them knew that Hayes had prepared a trap far more elaborate than they imagined. She had hired mercenaries willing to kill adults to protect her operation. That night would become a battle for the future of hundreds of enslaved children. At 9 o'clock sharp, the apartment filled with people Ethan never imagined would dedicate their lives to rescuing children. Commander Michael Santos of the FBI arrived in plain clothes, carrying maps of known criminal locations. Dr. Elena Martinez, a specialist in childhood trauma, brought medical equipment to treat children who might be injured or drugged. Father Joseph Reynolds, coordinator of religious shelters, had organized safe houses in 3 different states. But the person who impressed Ethan most was a young woman who introduced herself simply as Anna. "I was one of the first children James rescued 5 years ago," she said. "I was 12 when they pulled me out of an illegal textile factory where children worked 18-hour days. James paid for my education through high school. Now I work as an infiltrator, identifying trafficking operations from the inside." Anna spread photographs and documents across the table. "I've been investigating Margaret Hayes' operation for months. It's far larger and far more brutal than we imagined." The photos showed children working in farms, factories without ventilation, fields under brutal sun with no water. Hayes didn't just sell children locally. She had contracts with international criminal organizations. American children were being sent to Mexico, Canada, even Europe. Ethan froze when he saw one photograph. Lucas, his best friend, working in what looked like a tobacco plantation. Thin, dirty, his eyes empty of hope. "Where is this?" Ethan whispered. "Carter Farm in North Carolina." Anna replied. "We've identified 32 children working there under slave conditions. Hayes sold them 2 months ago as temporary farm workers." Commander Santos stepped forward. "We've been preparing coordinated raids against Hayes' entire network," he said. "But we needed a key witness, someone who lived inside the group home, who saw the procedures, who can identify buyers." He looked at Ethan. "And now we have one. But there's a problem," Anna added. "Hayes knows Ethan can destroy her organization. She's desperate to capture him. She's put a price on your head." Santos said gravely, $5,000 for anyone who delivers you alive." Ethan took a slow breath. "What do you suggest?" "Operation Storm," Santos said. "We strike all known locations simultaneously. The group home, the plantation in North Carolina, 2 illegal factories in Tennessee, 3 safe houses. When? Ethan asked. Tomorrow night. We have enough legal evidence for mass arrests. But, Anna interrupted. We've learned Hayes' plans to move the children tomorrow morning. If we don't act fast, we'll lose hundreds of victims forever. The lawyer turned to Ethan. Your testimony is essential. But testifying means exposure. Hayes will do everything possible to silence you. Ethan thought of Lucas, of the children still trapped. What is my role? Santos spread out a detailed map. We need you to identify the internal layout of the group home, where children sleep, where documents are kept, escape routes the criminals might use. And, Anna added, we need you to help calm the children during the rescue. They'll panic when armed officers arrive. Your familiar voice could save lives. And after the raids, the lawyer said, we begin phase 2. Permanent shelters. Legal prosecution nationwide. A system that protects orphans instead of exploiting them. Ethan nodded. I'm ready. Father Reynolds hesitated. Once this becomes public, you won't live like a normal child again. You'll face danger, scrutiny, responsibility. Ethan looked again at Lucas's photograph. I stopped being a normal child 5 years ago. He said quietly, if my suffering can save others, then it was worth it. The adults exchanged solemn looks. Then Operation Storm begins tomorrow, Commander Santos declared. That night, Anna led Ethan through underground tunnels beneath Richmond's historic buildings. Their final refuge was a hidden room beneath the cathedral, once used during religious persecutions decades earlier. You'll be safe here until tomorrow, Anna said. Use the time to prepare yourself. Lying on a narrow bed surrounded by ancient stone walls, Ethan reflected on how completely his life had changed. 3 weeks earlier, he had been a terrified, runaway foster kid. Now he was an heir, a son, and the catalyst of a war against human trafficking. Most importantly, he had found something he had never had before. A reason to exist. Ethan woke before dawn to the sound of cathedral bells echoing above the hidden refuge. It was the day of Operation Storm. In 12 hours, the lives of hundreds of children would change forever. Anna arrived with fresh clothes and troubling news. Hayes suspects something big is coming, she said quietly. She doubled security at all her locations and started moving children overnight. She showed Ethan surveillance photographs taken by federal agents. 6 trucks had left the Willowbrook group home during the night. At least 40 children. Anna said, we don't know where they're taking them. Ethan's hands clenched. The children were packed into windowless vehicles, treated like cargo. No food. No water. We're trying to track the trucks, Anna continued. But Hayes uses routes that avoid highway checkpoints. They could be anywhere within 500 miles. Commander Santos entered with updated maps. It's worse, he said. We intercepted communications confirming Hayes hired armed mercenaries. These aren't local thugs anymore. They're professionals. Children ran everywhere. Staff panicked. Guards searched desperately for a fire that didn't exist. Then the sirens began. Federal vehicles surrounded the group home from every direction. FBI. Everyone on the ground. Hands where we can see them. But Hayes had prepared for this. Activate emergency protocol. She shouted into a radio. Eliminate evidence. Evacuate valuable assets. Ethan saw staff dragging children toward waiting vehicles. Anna. He shouted toward the incoming agents. They're escaping with children through the back. Teams moved to intercept, but Hayes's contingency plan was ruthless. 3 trucks escaped before they could be blocked. 20 children vanished toward unknown destinations. The cost was higher than anyone expected. During a gunfight, Commander Santos was gravely wounded while shielding a group of small children. A bullet pierced his lung. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Anna ran to Ethan, tears streaming. Santos risked his life so no child would be hurt. Ethan felt crushing guilt. This is my fault. No, Anna said firmly. We saved 32 children today, including these 12, because of you. The lawyer arrived breathless. We arrested Hayes and 8 associates. We recovered documents pointing to 3 more operations. Then his voice lowered. We also found something disturbing. He showed Ethan a seized file. There's a kill order on you, issued by an international criminal organization. Ethan nodded slowly. So this doesn't end here. No, Anna said. It means your testimony is now the most valuable weapon we have. That night, as Ethan waited for news of Commander Santos's surgery, he understood something he hadn't before. Justice had a cost. And sometimes that cost was paid by good people willing to stand in front of danger. That night, Ethan waited in the hospital hallway while surgeons fought to save Commander Santos's life. He sat alone, staring at the floor, replaying every moment in his mind. The screams, the sirens, the children running, the gunshots. He had imagined rescuing children would be about courage and clever planning. He hadn't imagined blood. Anna sat beside him after a long while. She didn't speak at first. Do you regret it? She finally asked. Ethan looked toward the room where the rescued children were being examined by doctors. Daniel, the 8-year-old who had screamed fire, caught Ethan's eye and smiled weakly, giving him a small thumbs up. No, Ethan said quietly. I don't regret saving them. I regret that it costs so much. Father Reynolds joined them, placing a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. When you fight evil, he said softly, there is always a price. The question is not whether there will be sacrifice, but whether the sacrifice is worth the lives saved. 2 hours later, the surgeon emerged. Commander Santos will live, he announced. He'll need months of rehabilitation, but he'll recover. Relief washed over Ethan like a wave. When they were finally allowed into the room, Santos was awake, pale, but smiling faintly. How many children? Were his first words. 32 in Richmond. Anna replied. 18 in North Carolina. 21 in Tennessee. Santos closed his eyes, exhaling. 71 lives in one day. He whispered. Worth any bullet. Then he looked directly at Ethan. The agents saw a 10-year-old willing to risk his life to save others. You made them braver than they ever thought they could be. But Santos also brought serious news. We intercepted communications from the international organization. They put a price not only on your head, but on everyone involved. Anna, Hartfield, even the adoptive families. Silence filled the room. Anna spoke first. What do you recommend, Commander? Operation Permanent Refuge. Santos replied. We use James's inheritance to build a network of secure safe houses. Ethan and his adoptive family will need long-term protection, but also the ability to continue rescue operations. Attorney Hartfield opened a folder. I've already started the legal process. The James Westbrook Memorial Foundation for Child Protection will be officially established next week. It will have federal authorization to cooperate in rescue operations. And the Westbrook family in Shenandoah? Ethan asked. They're fully committed. Hartfield said. They've already begun converting part of their ranch into a secure refuge. Anna added, they won't just be your parents. They'll be regional coordinators for the foundation. But another issue remained. The media is demanding interviews. Anna said, your story is becoming national. You can use the attention to gain public support, but you'll never be anonymous again. Ethan considered this carefully. What kind of support? Families across the country are calling to adopt rescued children. Business leaders are donating funds. The federal government is forming a special division against child trafficking. Santos shifted painfully in bed. In 1 week, he said, you went from a runaway foster kid to the face of a national movement. That power can save thousands of lives, but it comes with responsibilities that will define the rest of your life. He looked at Ethan steadily. Are you ready for that? Ethan turned toward the hospital window, looking out over Richmond. Somewhere out there, children were still sleeping in corrupt group homes, still working in hidden factories, still being moved in trucks like cargo. 3 weeks ago, Ethan said, my only goal was to survive one more day. Now I can make sure other children don't have to just survive. They can live. He faced the room. If you're willing to keep risking your lives to save children, then I'm willing to dedicate my entire life to this mission." Anna smiled. "Then tomorrow we begin phase 2. But none of them knew that even as they spoke, Margaret Hayes was being released on bail, paid by the International Criminal Organization. They didn't know she was already planning revenge. The war against child trafficking had only begun. 1 week later, Ethan stood inside the federal courthouse in Richmond, Virginia. He was 10 years old, and he was about to testify in the largest child trafficking trial in the history of the state. The courtroom was overflowing. Journalists from every major network, federal authorities, international observers, families of victims, representatives from child protection organizations. At the defendant's table sat Margaret Hayes, flanked by 12 co-conspirators. Corrupt politicians, bribed police officers, intermediaries, and habitual buyers of enslaved children. They all faced charges that carried life sentences. But Ethan understood something deeper. This trial was not just legal. It was moral. The prosecutor addressed him gently. "Ethan Westbrook, please tell the court what life was like inside the Willowbrook Group home under Mrs. Hayes' direction." For 3 hours, Ethan spoke. He described the damp rooms, the hunger, the punishments. He explained how children were selected, evaluated, priced. How boys were sold as agricultural laborers. How girls were transferred to families that exploited them sexually. How babies were delivered to international buyers for fixed sums. He told them about Lucas, about listening at night while adults negotiated the value of children who slept beside him, about the system of fear designed to break children until they accepted any fate as better than the group home. But the courtroom fell completely silent when the prosecutor asked the final question. "Why did you decide to risk your life to expose these crimes?" Ethan looked directly at Margaret Hayes before answering. "Because I understood that my suffering only had meaning if I used it to prevent other children from suffering the same way." He paused. "Mrs. Hayes taught us that foster kids have no value, that no one would miss us if we disappeared." His voice grew stronger. She was wrong. Every child has absolute value. Every child deserves love, education, and protection. And when adults fail that responsibility, other adults and society must intervene. The defense attorney stood abruptly. "Your Honor," he said sharply, "this witness is a 10-year-old child who has clearly been manipulated by adults with political agendas. His testimony is contaminated by coaching." Margaret Hayes rose to her feet. "You were a problematic child." She hissed toward Ethan. "You caused disturbances constantly. You're inventing stories to gain attention and money from naive adults." Murmurs filled the courtroom. Ethan remained calm. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "if I invented these stories, then please explain to the court where Lucas Carter, Sophie Reynolds, Daniel Martinez, and Emily Patterson are." She didn't answer. The prosecutor added, "And explain why 32 children were found working in slave conditions at locations only you had access to." Then came the testimony that sealed her fate. Lucas. He entered the courtroom slowly, thinner than before, but standing tall. He had been rescued from the tobacco plantation in North Carolina in critical condition, severely malnourished, dehydrated, infected wounds untreated. After weeks in the hospital, he was strong enough to speak. Ethan promised he would find help. Lucas said, his voice shaking but steady, "Even when I was sold and thought I'd never see him again, I believed him." He turned toward Hayes. "You told me no one would miss me because I didn't have a family. You were wrong. Ethan is my brother, and he never forgot me." 18 more rescued children testified. Each told their story. Each identified Hayes as the person who sold them. But the final blow came when the prosecutor presented evidence no one expected. "Your Honor, we submit audio recordings of telephone conversations between Margaret Hayes and international buyers, intercepted during federal surveillance operations." The courtroom speakers played Hayes' voice, negotiating prices for specific children, discussing transport methods, confirming successful deliveries. In one chilling recording, she said, "American children are cheaper than others and less problematic. They're already trained to obey. Silence filled the courtroom. The judge looked directly at Hayes. "Do you have a final statement?" She stood without remorse. "These children were destined for poverty," she said coldly. "I gave them work and purpose. Society doesn't want to take responsibility for foster kids." The outrage was immediate. Ethan stood. "Your Honor, may I respond?" The judge nodded. "Mrs. Hayes," Ethan said, "you didn't give us opportunities. You stole our childhoods. You didn't give us purpose. You sold us to criminals." He turned toward the courtroom. "But you did teach us something important. You showed us exactly what kind of adults we never want to become." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Margaret Hayes was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Her 12 co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 15 to 40 years. But the impact went far beyond the courtroom. The governor of Virginia announced the creation of a permanent state child protection program, specifically funded to combat human trafficking. Congress passed stricter federal laws with mandatory minimum sentences for anyone involved in the sale of minors. And Ethan's law was enacted, requiring automatic federal investigation of any group home where children disappear without proper documentation. After the trial, thousands of people filled the streets of Richmond. But the most meaningful celebration happened that night in a secure government house. 71 rescued children gathered together for the first time. Lucas approached Ethan holding something in his hands. "You promised you'd change everything," he said, smiling. To Ethan Westbrook, who taught us that foster kids can become heroes. Anna gave him a book she had been writing, The Complete History of the James Westbrook Memorial Foundation, From Victim to Savior. Catherine and Thomas gave him the most meaningful gift of all, updated adoption papers, along with a document officially naming Ethan heir to everything they owned, including the ranch that had become the heart of the rescue operations. "You are our son," Catherine said through tears. "And you are also the son Virginia needed." That night, after everyone had left, Ethan sat alone on the porch, looking up at the stars above the Blue Ridge Mountains. He thought about the 10-year-old boy who had cried inside a buried car, believing he was completely alone in the world. Now he had a family who loved him unconditionally, a mission that gave meaning to every day, and the knowledge that hundreds of children had better lives because he had chosen to transform suffering into salvation. He opened a new notebook and wrote, "Today marks 3 years since I found James's car. 3 years since I learned that there are adults willing to love orphan children as their own. Next week, I begin university to study law and child advocacy. In 10 years, I will specialize in international child protection. In 20 years, the James Westbrook Memorial Foundation will operate shelters across all of North America. But tonight, what fills me with the greatest joy is knowing that tomorrow I will wake up in a warm bed, in a house full of love, with parents who care about my happiness. And I will wake up knowing that somewhere in America, a child is in danger, and that I have the resources, the experience, and the team to save them." The buried car taught me that tragic endings can become miraculous beginnings. My life truly began the day I decided my suffering would only matter if it helped end the suffering of others. The mission continues. Ethan closed the notebook and walked inside, where Catherine and Thomas waited with hot chocolate and stories from the day. For the first time in his life, he was both a beloved son and an inspiring leader, a normal teenager, and a guardian of thousands of futures yet to be saved.